Okay, so in this video, I'm going to be covering section 1-3 for chapter 1, collecting data. So again, refer to your notes as I'm going through the lecture. Okay, so collecting sample data. So broadly speaking, there are data is obtained through two distinct sources: observational studies and experiments. So you got to be able to distinguish whether the study was observational study or an experiment. And here's pretty much the breakdown. So observational study versus experiment. Observational study is where we're just observing and we're measuring, but we do not modify. So we're just observing and measuring. There's no treatment or nothing that was included in the study that is going to change the data, right? Whereas in an experiment, a treatment, some kind of treatment is applied, and then we observe and measure the data. In general, experiment is more powerful just because usually we have like one group that got the treatment and the other group that didn't get the treatment. And then we can compare the two data, the two groups, right? The one who got the treatment and those who did not get the treatment. And it's more powerful in that sense that we have a controlled group. So the difference between observational study and experiment is treatment not involved in an observational study, whereas in experiment there is some kind of treatment. All right, so take a moment just to let's read this together to see whether it's an observational study or an experiment. So number one, in a study, 50 patients with brain cancer were divided into two groups. One group received a drug to fight the cancer, the other a placebo. And a placebo is just like you didn't really receive the drug, you received some kind of pill that, a sugar pill, just to kind of trick you that it's it's a drug. And it serves as a control group. So after 2 years, the spread of the cancer is measured. So in this one, what is it? Is it an observational study or is it an experiment? And is there a treatment involved here? Right, so this would be an experiment because something was in the study to modify the data. And don't think that if something is in the study to modify the data, that's a bad thing. It's actually a good thing because usually we have like a drug to modify the data and then another group that didn't get the drug. So this is an experiment because there was a treatment involved, right? Whereas this one, a medical researcher tested for a difference in blood pressure levels between male and female who are 16 years of age. This one is an observational study because there's nothing that was, there's not a treatment that was involved here. It's just the medical researchers took a bunch of data from males and females who were 16 years old, right? Nothing was included to change the data. There wasn't a drug that was changing the blood pressure, or they didn't do something to scare the people to change their blood pressure. They just measured the blood pressure for the subjects. Does that make sense? Experiment versus observational study. Okay, so specifically, we're going to talk about designs of an experiment, and I'll let you guys know ahead of time, there are no homework questions involving design of experiments. So I'm going to run through this pretty fast. It's not going to be on the test. But in general, it is important to know the designs of experiment. So when designing an experiment, it's a good practice to use some kind of randomization. So what happens is you have a group of subjects, right? And then you randomize them, putting some into the treatment group and some into the placebo group. So what randomization means is we're not cherry picking who goes into the treatment group. We're not selecting it. We're randomly selecting who goes into the treatment group and who goes in the placebo group. Again, the treatment group is the group that actually gets the drug. The placebo group, they receive something that looks like the drug, but it's actually just like nothing, right? A sugar pill. Another good practice is blinding. Blinding is where the subjects, they don't know whether they got the drug or not, right? You don't want to trick somebody into thinking that, you don't want them to know that they actually have the drug. If you didn't get the drug, if you got the placebo and you knew you didn't get the drug, it's gonna kind of mess up with the data, right? You know that you didn't get a drug, so it may mess up with the data. On the other hand, if you did know you had a drug, that might mess up the data as well. So that's blinding. Better than blinding is double blind. What does double blind mean? That's right. That's right. So that means both the subjects and the experimenter don't know whether the subject or who's in which group, right? And what typically happens is like the manufacturer ships, two boxes, one for group A, one for group B, and they give it to the experimenter, the doctor, and they don't know which is the drug, which is the placebo, and they break down the group into two groups, and they just give the group A the box A, the stuff in box A, and group B and the stuff in box B, right? All right, so this stuff you gotta know. So sampling technique is on the homework. It's also gonna be on the tests. A big part of the test is gonna be on you guys knowing these 5 different sampling techniques. So simple random is ideal. We want to use when possible, but sometimes it is not possible. Sometimes the population is too big in different regions of the country and it's hard to get a simple random sample. Convenience sampling is widely used, but it's not good. It's bad. Systematic sampling, stratified sampling, cluster sampling, these are good alternatives to simple random sample, but when simple random is difficult to get. So we're going to go down each of these. So don't worry, we're going to break down each of these so you guys understand them. All right, convenience sample. We're going to start with that because that's the easiest one. So it is where you use results that are easy to get. So for example, right here, this is convenient, right? This person is conducting a study, and they see the person outside close to them, and they ask the question, do you believe in the death penalty, right? It's very easy to get when you just ask people, random people near you, right? So the example I use when I'm in the classroom is, if I want to gauge whether students understand a topic, I might just ask the students near me to ask them whether they understand it. Or I might just say, hey, raise your hand if you understand it. That's easy for me to get, right? That's convenience. A more better way to do it is I randomly select a student, and I ask them, hey, do you understand the topic or something, right? So convenience is easy to get. A simple random sample, this is the definition of a simple random sample. A sample of n subjects is selected in such a way that every possible sample of the same size n has the same chance of being chosen. Now, this definition is complicated, but the easy way to think about it is anything that represents or is equivalent to like a random phone number dial or a random number generator or drawing names randomly from a hat, that's what a simple random sample is. So anything that's equivalent to any of these things where you have your sample, right, in this case in a database, and you randomly choose it. Maybe you program, there's a program that when you click a button, it randomly selects one, the phone number. That's a simple random. That's a simple random sample, right? When you're randomly just selecting phone numbers. Or you have a random number generator where you're just randomly selecting a number, and that number is tied to a subject in the sample, right? Or you're randomly drawing names to get your sample. So these 3 things, you can think of this as these are examples of simple random sample. Systematic is a little bit tougher. It's not too tough. Systematic sampling is where you select some starting point and then you select every kth element in this population. And that kth is just like a number, right? So for example, let's say you have you're in a manufacturing plant and you're selecting every third webcam to be a part of your sample to test for the quality, right, of the webcams. So you don't want to test all of them, you just test every third of them, right? Every third webcam. So that's every kth. In this case, the kth would be the third, right? So every time you run into a situation where they're selecting every element, that's systematic. Stratified and cluster are very similar, so please pay attention. So stratified is where you divide the sample into subgroup, or you divide the population into subgroups sharing the same characteristics, and then you draw a random sample from each subgroup. So for example, let's say California is our population that we're interested in. We might divide California, the people of California, into women and men, and select some women, randomly select some women, and then randomly select some men, right? And we don't have to divide it by, we could have divided, instead of gender, we could have divided it by like race or ethnicity. With a stratified sampling, we would sample some Caucasian, sample some Hispanic, some African American, some Asian, some Native American, some other, and then that would be our sample, right? So stratified is you break it up into some characteristics, and then you sample from each of the groups, each of the subgroups, right? And stratified is ideal when you want to make a comparison between the different groups, right? You want to make a comparison about who approves of Trump, women compared to men, or who approves of Trump, and the percentage of those who approve of Trump based off of their ethnicity. Cluster is where it's ideal where when you're sampling, but it's like physically it's difficult to get a random sample. So for example, like voting is something that's very popular with cluster sampling. So cluster sampling is where you divide the region into sections, right? You divide your population into sections, like physical sections called clusters, and then you randomly select some of the clusters, and now you choose all the members from the selected cluster. So for example, like I said, like voting is very popular, right? Let's say we have like a state. This doesn't look like a state that we know in the United States, but let's just say this was a state in the United States, and you break it up into precincts. So states are usually broken up into voting precincts, and in this particular state, there's 32 precincts. Now, if you want to say estimate, those who, let's say we're voting for like a bill on gun control. Like if you want to sample those who, if you want and to estimate those who approve of gun control, it's very tough to go into each of the precincts. So what happens here is you randomly choose 3 precincts, right? In this case, they randomly chose precinct 5, 16, and 28. And then everyone in precinct 5 is part of your sample. Everyone in precinct 16 is part of your sample. Everyone in precinct 28 is part of your sample. All right, so cluster and stratify are very similar in the sense that you break them up into different subgroups. But with cluster, you randomly select a subgroup. In this case, we call them sections or clusters. And everyone in there is part of the sample. Every one of those that you chose, like precinct 5, 16, and 28, is part of your sample. So take a moment to think about that. See if you have any questions. Okay, so that concludes that section. Let me see if I don't have examples here. So as you're working out the homework problems, if you have any questions, again, shoot me an email. You can always refer to this video as well.